Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of gypsum products. Today we'll be answering the types of gypsum, the calcination process as a whole, and what is this hygroscopic expansion. Okay, so let's begin. So first of all, what is this calcination? See, calcination is the process through which the gypsum is formed initially. So basically, calcium sulfate hemihydrate formation occurs by removal of water from the crystals of the naturally occurring dihydrate molecules. Okay, so there are two types of calcination. The first one is the wet calcination. So the wet calcination is done under steam or pressure. It is done inside a kettle or a rotary kiln. Okay, and it is done at temperatures of 110 to 130 degrees. Now, the wet calcination produces the alpha hemihydrate type of particles. Now, what are these alpha hemihydrate particles? They're stone or dental stone. Now, these particles have a much more dense plus uniform particle size. And the next process is called the dry calcination. Now, the dry calcination, as the name suggests, is done in open air, and this produces beta hemihydrate. So this is basically your plaster, and this has an irregular and quite porous kind of particles. Okay, so moving on, let's start off. According to ANS or ANSI or ADA, the American Dental Association, the number 25 was the norms used to describe the gypsum products. Okay, so there are five types: the impression plaster, the dental plaster, the dental stone, the dye stone or the high strength dye stone, and then dye stone with high strength and high expansion. Now, when I say beta hemihydrates, these are the impression plaster and dental plaster. The alpha hemihydrate is actually the stone. Okay. Now, there are other synonyms that you need to know. Like dental plaster is also known as plaster of Paris. Okay. Dental stone, on the other hand, is known as hydrocal, and it is also called class 1 stone. Okay. Dye stones are commonly referred to as improved stone or densite. Okay. So now, discussing the properties of these different materials, the setting times of type 1 gypsum product is 5 minutes, which is impression plaster. And the reason is quite obvious. You can't have an impression material that takes too long to set. And coming to the others, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth have 12 plus or minus 4 minutes, which would be either 16 or 8 minutes. Okay. Now, coming to the setting expansion. Now, the setting expansion is the expansion of the particles, which I will be discussing in the later part of this video during the time of hydration. So, one important thing to note in this is none of the other um, gypsum products have a minimum setting expansion except type 5 or high strength, high expansion dye stone. And then the setting expansion is maximum for type 2 and type 5 stone. Okay, so the type 1 has 0.15, type 2 has 0.30, type 3 has 0.20, type 4 has 0.10, and type 5 has zero point 0.3. Now, how do you remember this? You can remember it as 15 into 2 is 30, 20 plus 10 is also 30. Okay, so 15 into 2 is 30, 20 plus 10 is also 30. Now, coming to the compressive strengths. So, the compressive strength is an indicator of the strength of the gypsum product. Okay, so you can remember this as less than 5, less than 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, so less than 5 is 4, less than 10 is 9, 20 in 20s is 20.7, in 30s is 34.5, and in 40s is 48.3. Okay, and all of these are measured in MPa, units of pascals. Okay, now coming to the powder liquid ratios of the different dental materials, the type 1 has the highest powder liquid ratio because it has a beta hemihydrate structure which is irregular. So what did we discuss? It is irregular plus porous, so it requires more water. Okay, but as you can see, the stones require less water. Why is this? It is because the arrangement is quite regular, plus they are dense in nature. Okay, so how do you remember this? You remember type 1's setting powder liquid ratio as 5 to 75. The next is 45 to 50. Then it is 28 to 30, 22 to 24, and 18 to 22. These are very important values for you to know. Okay. Now coming to hygroscopic expansion. Now what is this hygroscopic expansion? Why is it relevant? And how does it happen? Okay. Hygroscopic expansion is basically the extensive expansion of the gypsum crystals when compared with the normal crystals. So now you can see that the initial beginning phase of hygroscopic expansion is not very different from the normal setting expansion. Just for clarity, this is the hygroscopic expansion, this is the normal expansion. So first let me explain what happens in the normal expansion. In the process of normal expansion, some amount of water particles are taken within the gypsum hemihydrate, and as the crystals start to grow, the amount of water, as you can see, is reducing. And at the final moment, when the particles run out of water molecules and the branching starts overlapping on each other between the particles, the entire process stops. And this is the total amount of expansion. But in hygroscopic expansion, the particles have a consistent amount of water because you have immersed it under running tap water or in a bucket. So what happens? The crystals initially form, they start growing, and they start branching, and they branch, they branch, they branch, and they continue branching. And since the water source is not ending as it did in the normal expansion, the crystals will continue to grow inordinately. And even so, after a while, the branches will contact each other, and the setting expansion will stop. So the hygroscopic setting expansion is usually twice that of normal expansion. Now, why is this hygroscopic expansion useful? The hygroscopic setting expansion can be used for investment materials that are gypsum based to counter the casting shrinkage. So the casting tends to shrink. So if the gypsum product expands in relation to this shrinkage, it may maintain the normal size of the casting. Okay guys, so this was the part 2 where we answered 3 more important questions. If you have any other doubts or want me to explain anything else, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you and have a nice day.